We have a very interesting special company here with us today. The company's name now is Truffle Hill, and it specializes in truffles. But not so long ago, the company participated in agriculture under the name Truffle and Wine, right? So I'm not sure if it's indicative of some change and pivot a little bit in the offerings, but it's a company from as far away from where I am as it gets, so in all the way in Australia. What time is it in your time zone at this time? It's like midnight, isn't it?
Not quite. It's about 10 o'clock at night.
10 o'clock. So thank you so much for being with us here so late. So we would like to learn more about your company, about your product, about your perhaps challenges that the company is facing and the way it's addressing them. And so students, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Most students in North America, Latin America this time are in school and couldn't attend, so we will record the meeting for them. If you're watching the recording and if you have any unanswered questions, you can always email them to us and we'll try to find the answers. Yeah. But so let me move the microphone to our speaker here. So Michael, please do tell us a little bit more about your company. So what do you do? And I suspect that some people may not even know what truffles are. So we know that they're tasty, we know it's food, but I'm not sure how many people know that it's basically a mushroom, right? So tell us more about the product.
Yeah. So the fresh truffle is a mushroom, or a type of mushroom. It's tuber melosporum. It is grown by a symbiotic relationship between the tree roots and the fungi. The fungi coats the tree roots effectively, and it enables the tree to extract nutrients and water from the soil, which it otherwise would not be able to have access to. The physics of it is something along the lines of it's a surface area type thing and a little bit of chemistry, but basically it enables the tree to do better. And in return for getting these nutrients, it's okay, what do you want in return for this? And the truffle says, give me some sugar honey sort of thing. And so what happens is that this tree, which is a large photosynthetic cell, will produce the carbohydrates, the sugars, and it will drive them down to the roots in exchange for the nutrients which it otherwise, and water, which it might otherwise not get. So there is it's a bit like talking about cars. You know, you say, I drive a car, and you say, what type of car? You say, I have a mushroom. What type of mushroom? Oh, it's this. It's an SUV. It's not a sedan. And then you go down through the layers of what it is, and you get to the fact that this is there's this tuber melosporum, there's a series of tuber species, it's a mycorrhiza, and that there are a number of these in a range. There might be 200 and 260 edible species of these tubers. The most famous of them is the magnatum, tuber magnatum, which is a white truffle. And to date, they have not been able to propagate this in orchards. When you talk about the next most valuable truffle in the world, you're talking about tuber melosporum, which is a black truffle, Perigord truffle, and it is grown. It can be grown in a wide range of places, but in Australia, we actually put it into orchards. And so you have a northern hemisphere season for fresh truffle, and you have a southern hemisphere season for fresh truffle. The northern hemisphere, it's a winter grown thing, so it's from November through to March, you'll have fresh truffle, as in the black truffle, the tuber melosporum. And in Australia, we'll have it from the end of May through to the first week in September. That's the range which we have. And that's it. It doesn't move outside of that for fresh truffle.
So and then describe more how the operation is set up. So you call these orchards, because I understand it's not something that grows in boxes. I mean, this is like you need a forest for it, right?
That's correct. So basically in the wild, it will be an oak tree. In Australia, we'll have a hazelnut or an oak, various oak species will be the host species. And the land is prepared and you plant them as an inoculated seedling. It's not something you can say, oh, that's a beautiful tree, I'm going to spread these spores around and suddenly I've going to produce truffles. You actually have to do it at a very, very early stage, very young tree, as an acorn, and you grow them out in pots, and then you get them to about 12 months or 18 months old, and you may have transplanted them from different size pots, and then you will plant them into the soil, and you plant them in rows as an orchard, and your spacing between the rows and in the row will depend on what your philosophy is around the growing. And then in Australia also, we will need to be able to irrigate those trees. We're irrigating the trees, we're not irrigating for them the truffle. The trees have to be healthy, and the leaves have to be high functioning to produce all of the sugars that need to be going down in this exchange process, which ends up being producing the trees. Producing the truffle. The tree is, I won't say the truffle is parasitic. It is symbiotic. So I'll give you this, you give me this, and we're all happy. And as a truffle grower, we then have there's a whole process behind as the truffles ripen. It's like any orchard crop, perennial crop. You have to have a way of processing them. And for us, we have developed a methodology around processing the volume of fresh truffle that we have. The major producers of truffle exporters in the world, in order of Spain, and then France, and then possibly Australia. Actually, Australia and France may export around about the same amount of truffle, but in Europe, there is a whole mushroom culture, so they consume a lot more than they export.
Mm-hmm.
The same with Italy, you consume a lot more than is exported. So there are countries which you can collect the data on to see what the fresh truffle production is, because it's fresh truffle that's exported. It's not fresh truffle that's actually consumed within the country. When in Australia, we consume an amount of truffle, but over 85, 90% of what we grow is exported to other countries.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's for the fresh truffle.
Yeah, one more question about the product itself, and then maybe more about the geography. So how long is the sort of growing cycle? So if you have to sort of co-plant the tree and the spores when the tree is young, do I understand correctly that it takes years and years before you actually start harvesting?
Yeah, yeah.
And if so, I mean, how expensive is it? I mean, this is a gigantic investment if you have to wait for a few years, or maybe even for many years before you even can start harvesting your crop.
The cost of it's a very labor-intensive crop to actually establish. So if the cost of labor in country is relatively low, you've got a better chance. And in Australia, our cost in country is very high. So if you're talking about the lead time, you'll plant the tree, you'll prepare the land, and the preparation of a land for us will probably take 18 months or so to do before you actually plant something, because you've placed an order to grow the tree, or you're growing the trees yourselves. They just don't miraculously appear. Something has to happen for the tree to be there as a seedling. And then what you do is you plant, you irrigate, you tend, you fight off the rabbits, the cockatoos, which are a bird which comes and pecks the top growing tips out of the trees. You worry about the bugs and the insects and the disease, and you tend these trees lovingly, and maybe you see a little bit of truffle at the end of year 4, but historically you will not see a production level that's significant to cover your operating costs till about year 10. Wow. And you will not recover your investment on your initial investment probably until year 12 or year 14.
Well,
when people do, yeah. So it's a long cycle, and then the life of the orchard depends on where you are, the type of trees, production, and just nature, because sometimes you think something's going to just keep on producing forever, but nature comes along and it throws something at you, whether it's fire or drought or an insect pest or something which may compromise what you're trying to do. Yeah. The thing when you're dealing with truffle is a fungi, so if you get a fungus infection in a tree, you can't actually treat the fungus infection in the tree because it will end up decimating your production of your fresh truffle.
That's true. So you cannot use the regular fungicides because it can kill your mushroom, right?
That's right.
Very interesting.
So it's a lot of expense involved in actually getting yourself into production, a long lead time. And then you get to producing the fresh truffle, and out of the fresh truffle, you get so much which will go to chefs, which is a chef grade product. And then you have an amount of truffle which doesn't make chef grade, but it's still good. And that can go into the gourmet products. And then you have products which will be the rot. And even the rot is useful because you can put that back on the ground, add the spores to increase your production, or use that as an inoculum for future plantings. So the truffle itself is, when you sell it, we like to think ourselves as a good butcher. We can sell everything from the nose to the tail and everything in between. The prime cuts, which are the fresh truffle, and then we have the truffle, which can go into the gourmet products, and then we have the lowest grade of all, which is the rot. The thing which we are most excited about is actually we are producing the volumes of truffle now that means we can have an amount of truffle which can go into the gourmet products. And unlike the fresh truffle, which has got an availability of between 12 and 14 weeks of a season, and then with the southern hemisphere matched up with the northern hemisphere, you know, our 12 weeks with northern hemisphere, 12 weeks, that's 24 weeks of fresh truffle, and that's all you've got in the 52 years of the year, 52 weeks of the year. So with the truffle products, we have something we can give people a taste of the truffle, and that should be available all year round. And also the idea is you've got a product which is be a value uplift, in the sense of the product which may be the grade of the truffle which can go into those products. By the time you do all your myth and magic around producing your truffle oil, your truffle hot sauce, your truffle mustards and the like, and the truffle jus, you've then got something which you can then, because of your reputation, your brand, you can then take to the world, and then you're able to get some additional value and generate an income all year round. And that's what we do with our gourmet products.
So there are some questions from the students, and I have that question too, in terms of, so how do you prepare a truffle? Do you eat it raw, or it requires some preparation? And there are some questions about aroma and flavor, like what makes a luxurious truffle? How do you know what's good and what's not? It's such an exotic product. We all hear about it, but
yes,
most people don't even know what it is. So how do you eat it?
How do you eat it? Well, basically, it can be used. It's something that's just cooked. It can be the magic ingredient. It can be the hero ingredient of a great dish. It adds flavor. It's something it enhances flavor of many, many different types of food. And then it can be a hero ingredient. So you might have a famous dish and it might not even mention truffles, but it's had truffle added to it because one of the chefs that said, we did a promotion with a particular chef, a well-known chef, and he would say, I looked at the menu and I said, it's fantastic. And this is Andrea, it's fantastic menu, it's great. It mentions our name and everything, but none of the dishes mention our truffle. It doesn't say with truffle. And he said, it doesn't say with salt either, right, because the dish is it's just understood that dish has truffle in it. And then you have another side of it where the chefs will say everything is with truffle or with truffle and with truffle. And because it's got with truffle, that is the thing which entices people to try the dish.
That's what I thought. I would advertise that. I mean, even if it's only a few grams, I would still say, I think people would respond to it positively if they know that it has this exotic, interesting mushroom in it. Transportation. Yeah. So 2 questions here. One, obviously the geography. So you mentioned that you export a lot of it. So where does it go? But also, how easy is it to transport a product like this? I assume it's a perishable product. So is it
for the fresh truffle,
put in an envelope and mail, right?
Yeah. So for fresh truffle, we would have, you'd say it's got a lifespan. It's like a lettuce. It's got a lifespan of about 10 to 14 days, and it depends on how you handle it as to how it will last. So for us, all of our procedures, we try to get it out of the ground in the best condition. We try to get it out of our shed as fast as we can to the chefs, to the market as quickly as possible. And it goes in vacuum sealed bags. It goes in at a regulated temperature, and we have a packing system which all works around that. Mm-hmm. And it all goes air freight. Nothing goes sea freight. Even with gourmet products at the moment, we would be sending everything via air, because logistics in the world are pretty well broken still. And we have had instances where things we've sent by sea, it's taken 60 days, not 15 days. And it's just sat there and it's cooked because that particular container is sat on somewhere for a while. So those sort of things, when the logistics, our objective is to be able to get them to market as quickly as possible. And at the moment, that can prove to be expensive. But as we're finding, people would prefer to see the product arrive in the best condition and prepared to pay for that than say, well, for the sake of 50 cents a unit, because sea freight also is not cheap at the moment. The time differential, when you start waiting for things, you lose your market. People still want stuff when they want it. They're not, whatever it is. Yeah, so you have to be able to play with that, in the sense that part of our value is the fact that we can say, yes, we can get it to you by air freight. Yes, we can do it in this time frame. We can offer you this, we can offer you that, but what is your expectation? And then we try to, we find that people are prepared to pay the additional money, even on the gourmet products in a little jar, just to have it there, because we still want stuff when we want it. So yeah, you go.
There is a question from Louise. He's asking about, is it possible to freeze truffles and ship them frozen? And I had a question whether or not you can maybe put them like in some sort of can, like can it be sort of prepared and then canned and sold, so that you can preserve it longer? Is it possible?
Yes. So all of those things are they work on the premise that you can't sell all of your fresh truffle. So the answer is, we never have enough fresh truffle to sell. We do have a production peak, and at the top of that peak, we may keep an amount of truffle, and we may freeze some truffle at we've got a process, a blast freeze process at the peak of production. But it's not, we can't get enough truffle into the market. Our view, which has proven to be so far, has proven to be correct, is that people look at a plate and they'll say, well, I want this 50% of the plate. I'll say, fine, I'll take 30% of the plate, but I'm going to take a bigger plate. I'm not going to use the plate that you're using. I'm going to take this plate. So, and this is what we're doing here. I'm explaining our product. I'm explaining how we market. Market is about value. When you're marketing something, you get value out of something. When you're selling something, you're talking about price. And price is, all you're doing is you're going to the lowest common denominator. For us, we talk about value in everything we do. We buy ourselves into what you want, what the chefs want, what the consumer wants. And that's where we are at the moment. So we do a frozen product, and we have a demand, again, which exceeds our capacity to supply. So our frozen truffle will work at a marginal discount to our fresh truffle. Our fresh truffle, we can't supply enough. It's more a case of the time the truffle comes out. In the last 2 years, it's been a case of we can't get to that market because the planes aren't flying. or it's going to take too long, or all of those things in this funny world we've lived in. And so, yes, we have frozen truffle, and yes, we do sell frozen truffle, but it is better for us to be able to sell it as a fresh product where we can sell it fresh. And then when we look at what we can do with our gourmet products, with a lower grade truffle, which we can't sell to chefs or to consumers, direct consumers as a fresh product, we'll put into these gourmet products, which have got a different market, but it's a year-round market. It's repetitive income, and that's where we are with that product. Yeah.
So tell us more about your customers. You keep mentioning chefs. Do I understand correctly that it's primarily chefs at restaurants? So geography, where they are, but also frequency of shipment. Is it, regular customers that you ship something every day to? So who are the people buying, or people or organizations buying your product, and how is it set up?
That's a great question. So we would have we have 14 distributors worldwide for the fresh truffle. For the fresh truffle, we would be delivering once or twice a week. Because we can get the truffle out to people in a very short period of time. It used to be 48 hours paddock to plate. We probably would say yes, it's 72 hours now, but that still gives people order a volume of truffle to last them the week. And that gives them a very good shelf life. We've lost a day in digging it up, washing it, grading it, packaging it, and getting it dispatched. We then have 3 days of travel, and then we have 7 days of they can use it. So there's 11 days that's gone out of the 14 days. So we've still got some overhang. We still have some of our truffle appearing in dishes internationally at the moment, because they handle the truffle very well when it gets to the chefs and gets to the different places it's used. And so it's got an extended life. So when people get more used to using truffle, the lifespan can be extended. Sorry, I lost track of that, so I've gone off the track.
Well, so how do you find your customers, or how do they find you?
Okay.
Again, it's not a product that you would advertise on TV, right? So it's, in a way, it is business to business, right? So I guess you don't really sell it to the end users. So how does it work? Because it's a very peculiar setup. It's not the normal marketing that you can use for this, right? So
again, when we talk about the fresh truffle is really around, we do boring things really well. We have a high quality product. It's well packaged. It's presented the same. At the beginning of the season to the end of the season, you should get the same product. And if you come to me and you say, I want 1 kilo of truffle a week, I want 5 kilos of truffle a week, we can say yes or no, because it's a finite production. We can't, there'll be variations around the season, but we can't produce any more than we can. So we'll go, okay, if you want that, we'll guarantee you your 5 kilos a week. Or if it's a distributor, we'll guarantee you we can deliver 50, 60 kilos a week. And then I'll be out talking to the chefs. So we also had we have chefs and chef ambassadors, people who you'll see on Instagram and Facebook and the various line and everything else that will be out there promoting the product. They're promoting themselves, and it's just the fact that we are one of the ingredients that they're supplying. So our story is around the provenance of our product. When you buy something from us, I can take you to a bit of dirt. We can jump up and down and say that's where it's grown. And we build ourselves around the reliability and the quality of year in, year out, which we've been doing since 2007 for the fresh truffle. Yeah.
And I can imagine your industry, that reliability, that reputation is extremely important.
Yeah.
Especially when it goes, in terms of pricing, so we hear a lot about the increased energy prices, the air travel is more expensive, and I assume freight is more expensive. Did it affect your industry in any way? So is it more difficult for you to produce to the higher cost? Are you charging more now than you were a year ago? So how are these economic fluctuations in the global economy affecting your business?
Again, a very good question. in a macroeconomic sense, the change in the world, what we saw when people came out of COVID, there was a rage spend. So where people were able and did have the resources, they came out and they spent big on all sorts of things, and food being one of them. And so getting the best food and going to the best restaurants, or even when things were in lockdown, we had chefs who were doing catering to home meals or doing home delivery. And it's like, for us, and I hate mentioning a name, but we'd do a McDonald's drive-through and a pickup. They're doing filet mignon, and they're doing with truffles, and they're doing the top wines, and because they could. So for us, we had a greater cost in doing the products. To be honest, we were a little bit scared about how far we could push the prices, so we absorbed a lot of costs. We saw our pricing increase, but not to the extent where we were covering the cost of the inputs to do this stuff. When you have to put in the consent, if you say we have an amount of truffle that's going to New York, or it's going to London, or into Hong Kong, and you've got, it's 50, 60, 80,000 US in a shipment for that particular shipment, and you've got shipments going all around the world on a Tuesday or a Thursday or whatever day of the week it is, and then you get the word that, oh, New York shut down. What do you mean it shut down? I mean, it's shut down. So all of this product which we put into the air is arriving in a place you don't know if anyone was going to actually pick it up.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was a pretty scary, scary time.
Yeah, yeah.
For as a business, where that's the bulk of our income. Yeah. And again, I'll drive back towards the gourmet products, in that it's one of the reasons that we have shifted more to the gourmet products, because it's something I can put in a jar, I can do a jus, I can do truffle pieces or whatever into a can. That's a 5-year shelf life. Yeah. I can do hot sauce, ponzu dipping sauce, the oils and everything. That's a 24-month shelf life. So I've got a little bit of safety in that. It doesn't have to sell tomorrow. Whereas with fresh truffle, it does. It needs to sell right now. Yeah.
Well, I know prices are going up everywhere. My wife had birthday yesterday, and we went to one of our favorite restaurants that we hadn't gone for a few months, and it felt like prices, if not doubled, then definitely went up by like 50% compared to just a few months ago, half a year ago. So something's telling me that if you substantially increase your prices, everybody would take that as well. That's life. So
yes,
yeah.
But it's a balancing act. It is a balancing
you don't want to upset your regular customers, I assume, but yeah.
Yeah.
There is a question again from Louise about regulations. So when you sell a product like this, does it require any special certification? Are there any special rules, or you just sell it as any other agricultural product?
Yes, there are rules. There are always rules. Some of them we are HACCP accredited. We have a number of, for our fresh truffle, a number of accreditations. And then we have, in some countries into Asia, Korea, Taiwan, Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, UAE, you're dealing with things what you call the phytosanitary certifications in addition to, and that tends to be a per shipment basis. So it'll be a fixed cost. It'll cost, I don't know, pick a number. We'll say it's $500 per shipment, and it doesn't matter whether it is 5 kilos, 1 kilo, or 100 kilos. It's per shipment, and that's going to be one of the charges. So a body in Australia will sign a certification. We send that along with all our other documentation. Mm-hmm. But generally our regulations on the fresh product revolve around, we can deal with it as our HACCP certification. A number of countries, that's all going to change. The food biosecurity, fresh food, and particularly with mushrooms or things which are readily perishable. The rules are going to be changing. A number of countries are changing again. So we will be facing some situations where we're going to have to look at additional certification. Some of it would be duplication of what we already have, but it needs to be with that badge that's recognised rather than the badge we've currently got. So we're going to be facing some additional costs over the next 12 or 18 months, I feel, in just being able to have the access to markets. It's not, the markets are there. It's just being able to have the access to be able to tick the box when you go through those. Yeah. Good question.
How about your wine business? So it used to be Truffle and wine. Do you still sell wine? There is a question from one of the students apparently somewhere, and I might have missed that. So wine goes only to Japan. Why only Japan? So if that's correct information.
No, we do not export any wine. The wine is now just, it's part of the Truffle experience. When you come to the farm, you can buy the wines online, but it's not something that's core business. Our core business is Truffle, and that's part of the name change in terms of the brand change. And rightly or wrongly, it's gone through a number of different iterations. The parent company was originally trading as the Wine and Truffle Company, and that was primarily driven because they could do wines, but they didn't have any truffles at that stage. It was a long way. It was a long time before they started generating income from the truffles. So they started off with the wine side, which you could actually generate, and you could do things a lot faster and get access to the markets and start building your name. And that branding was very important. And then it changed to, there's a lot of discussion. We're going to change to Truffle Hill then, and it was decided they were going to do the Truffle and Wine Co. So they just inverted the thing. They could use the same logos, and it was just a little bit of a name and a play in the name. But over the last, particularly over the last 5 or 6 years, the wine side is, we can't, because of the volumes that we do, it's a small part of the business. It's never going to be unless you're going to do bulk wine to the world.
Right.
What's the wine? It's something. We just don't generate the wine. We're talking about 5,000-10,000 cases a year. It's nothing. So we've concentrated that at the cellar door.
5,000 to 10,000 cases. It sounds like a lot to me, but I know in your industry, probably
yeah. But the truffle is the main thing. And again, Truffle Hill with the name. Truffle Hill was the original branding for the gourmet products. And we'd kept it separate because we wanted to say there's fresh truffle and it's this, and then there's the gourmet products, which is that, which is a different caliber of item. You can't compare the unit cost of $2.50, $3 a gram as a retail value with fresh truffle as opposed to buying a jar for $20 Australian, little jar. So where we are now is that we did investigations, we did all the market research, and we've merged it into, and it's just become Truffle Hill. We glammed up our truffle dog, gave it a bit of gold, more colouring to it, made it not look as if it's a skinny little dog, but a well-fed dog, well-looked after dog. It's nice and gold, and it's got a little bit of bling around its neck, and that's our logo going forward. So we are now Truffle Hill. Yeah.
Makes sense. There is a question from Tim Rudzend. So that's about shipping. So considering the degree of uncertainty and risk with the cultivation process, would it be possible to pursue wholesale of your product? And so my question is also, so what is the normal shipping size? You mentioned 1 kilogram, 2 kilograms, 5. So how big and do I understand correctly the price you mentioned, $2.50 per gram? So does it mean that the kilogram of your product is a couple $1,000s? Is that how expensive it is?
So it's like anything. When you look at what you're paying at a shop front versus what the retailer is buying versus what the distributor is buying. So like any industry, you like to do your brag numbers. So your brag number is what someone's actually paying for at the shop front. When you actually go into a restaurant, someone might be paying $5,000 or $6,000 a kilo for the truffle in their dish. and that's what it is. But it's not how you need to think about it. You don't want to think about how much the value of the salt is in that dish either, or the flour, or the various components.
So that's
Yes,
we are
that's what it
getting
is.
into. Yeah, it's like a gemstone. I mean, I'm not sure how much gold costs today, but we're getting close to the price of gold per unit of weight, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah. But when you talk about the value of the truffle, say at Australia's average export value of truffle across all grades, and so this is leaving the farm, going to a distributor internationally, through the Australian Bureau of Statistics, which measures all of these things, you're talking around, we'll make it easy for the calculation. We'll call it $850 a kilo. Every step you take this through adds. They've got someone. We don't have big volumes of things, so if we talk going back to the shipping, there is not a lot of value to me to sell an individual kilo to an individual chef directly.
Yeah.
The handling costs and logistics just cut everything out. So an individual kilo with the chef might be paying $1,500 a kilo, say. $1,500 sounds good. It's only a kilo. Packaging, time, all the bits and pieces to get that to him and delivered to him personally, because chef's not going to go to the airport and pick it up.
Exactly.
Everything costs, and so yeah, it's a pretty good rule that you need to be. It's a third. Whatever the rate says, that will be a third for the grower, a third for the distribution network wholesaler, and an amount for the chef at the end. Yeah.
So there is a question related to that from Angel Rodriguez about sales representatives. So do you have sales representatives in larger cities or regions? I imagine like in New York or Paris, there are probably hundreds of restaurants that might be willing. Would it make sense to have someone?
Yeah, the model doesn't work. The model doesn't work. The people who are most, you'll get the big international distributors. You'll get the Urbanis, the Sabatinos, Lamonts, Plantins, mostly out of Europe. And their model is that they can do stuff year round. None of them are growers, but they source from growers, and they're basically middle people all the way through. All of them, where they make their real presence felt, is actually in their gourmet products, where they're adding truffle into their gourmet products. The fresh truffle, none of them, they might have family members that might grow a few kilos, but mostly they're buying off a number of growers. And I'm talking about hundreds of growers, if not thousands of growers, and some of them aren't growers. They're just people who go out and hunt for the truffle in the wild. So with us, we're different in that we have a concentration of, it's very hard to explain the production parameters which we work under. If you go to Europe, they might talk about 10 or 15, 20 kilos a hectare in terms of a metric to work to. In the wild, that might be a big number. They might talk 50 kilos to 100 kilos. We produce 300, 400, 500 kilos a hectare in our region. So we have a volume of product that comes in a very short period of time to be able to sell, but it's only 12 weeks. So if you put a salesperson in there or a representative in country, what are you going to do with them with the rest of the year?
For the rest of
there
the
is
year,
there is not enough money. And if you're going to one market, you're only going to go to Singapore. You're going to take all of your truffle to Singapore. But the demographic of Singapore doesn't allow itself to consume that amount of truffle. It's a bit like Australia. We're only 25 million people. New York's 20 plus million people.
Yeah, metropolitan area, yeah.
And that's the thing. So you've got a volume of people to consume a volume of truffle. So, and in a very short period of time. So the people who tend to be our distributors are the people who deal with for the good fresh truffle, are the people who are producing or selling top-end poultry, top-end seafood, top-end beef. They might buy truffle from Spain, from France, from Italy, from Romania. During the Northern Hemisphere, they'll buy from Australia. They might buy them from Chile during our season. And so they might be able to supply this 24 to 26 weeks of fresh truffle. And the rest of the time, they're selling the beef and their seafood and their poultry. The thing which truffle gives you, truffle is a great diplomat. You have truffle opens doors. So if you don't necessarily need to make a lot of money out of selling truffle, because you develop a great relationship with the chefs, and that enables you to. It really is. It's a
interesting twist. I never thought about it this way. I thought truffles are like potatoes, agriculture, but no, it's a very complicated, very different type of product and market. So I encourage students to take a closer look at this case, because again, you learn some interesting complexities that you don't see in other industries or with other products. Yeah. Very interesting stuff.
So here's a funny little twist for us. So we were doing fresh truffle. We do that very, very well. Chef ambassadors, distribution, really well recognized, and even over the last 12 months where we've really established our brand on the Truffle Hill. But the thing with that is we have an amount of truffle, which is, again, we've gone into the gourmet product. We used to sell our lower grade truffle back into France. And in France, they would do what they would do with truffle oils, truffle mustards and the like. But because it only makes up 2.5% to 3% of the volume of the product, you can call it product of France without actually saying this bit of truffle came from Australia. So what we've done with our gourmet products is we've done the spin, is to say we've looked at the French and we look at the Italian products, and we've done Australian products. So we're making things from using Australian olive oil. I can take you to the farm. I can take you to the hives where the honey comes from, the truffle honey. I can take you to the chili farmers in Carnarvon and down near us in Manjimup, who provide the chili which goes into our hot sauce. So that's the change which we have done to try to get away from this concentrated period of 26 or 12 weeks, 14 weeks for us. And it's actually, when you talk about an in-country distribution or in-country representative, if you can actually build your business, and this is what we're looking for. We're looking for, if you have a person representing you, and that's what they do, they represent you well. If you have a person representing a series of brands and products, and they might have a series of SKUs, they might have a portfolio of 500 or 1,000 units or different items and branded items. It's very hard to be at the forefront of that. So with the gourmet products, what we're hoping to be able to do is be able to look at some countries where perhaps one of the opportunities is we do have in-country representation, but they're able to represent us year-round and sell the gourmet products. And then in the fresh season, they can sell fresh products. And that's part of the thing which we're playing around with. And it's complicated. It's not easy. And we can't do it in every market because we simply don't have the volume. It's an agriculture product. We can't produce more than we produce. And so the amount of fresh truffle we have is limited. And the volume of product which goes into the gourmet product is likewise limited. So you have to be able to find the best way to work in those markets. So whether it's using a distributor who specializes in gourmet products, and at the moment we only have one distributor worldwide who actually deals with fresh product and gourmet product. Only one. Everyone else, the guys who do the fresh product are dealing with meat and fish and poultry, and the guys who are doing the gourmet products are dealing with other dry goods, other things which
Right.
have a shelf life.
Very. It seems to me, one needs to write a book about this business, because you can touch upon so many interesting management, business, logistics issues using just one product as an example. Very interesting stuff. So we have a little overtime. We always aim for about 45 minutes. So we would like to be respectful of your time. And I know it's close to midnight now in Australia. Thank you so much for your presentation. For students, if there are any questions that have not been answered, just send us emails. We will forward them to the company. And yes, Truffle Hill Company is one of the more popular companies this semester. So you should expect a lot of students working on it. And I hope it also means that there will be a lot of interesting ideas and possibly business leads coming from this cohort. Thank you so much. Good night, and have a good day for those of you in the Americas. And yes, a nice weekend too. Thank you.
Thanks, Bess. Bye.
Bye-bye.